Good morning to all and welcome to the session, the Hindu Editorial Analysis for Proficiency in English. Today's editorial is all about controversial electoral bond scheme introduced by the BJP. I have already done twice or thrice editorials related to electoral bonds. This one talks about, throws more light, gives us information regarding a lot of problems associated with electoral bonds. When you ask the question, what is this editorial about? This editorial is about the controversial electoral bonds scheme. Who introduced this scheme? Introduced by the Bharatiya Janata Party BJP led government. When did it introduce in India? In 2018. Because it's a controversial issue, you have to guess the tone of the editorial. The tone of the editorial is a critical, criticizing, and urgent because a lot of problems are associated with this. It is urgent. How does it start? Pandora's box. Pandora's box means an idiomatic expression, something that creates a lot of new problems that you did not expect. Pandora's box means a lot of something, a source that creates a lot of new problems that you did not expect. You touch one problem, and when you work on that problem, many problems come up. Then we use the expression Pandora's box. On the electoral bonds scheme, emerging details. What is the Pandora's box here? Electoral bond scheme. And based on that scheme, emerging details, a lot of new problems are being exposed. What is the main idea of this editorial? More revelations from the electoral bonds necessitate a thorough investigation. Full of mystery, also, you can say. Good, very good. More revelations. Here we have a verb, reveal. Reveal, divulge, disclose, make public. You can also think of unveil. All these words mean the same. Good morning. Good morning to all of you. Reveal means what? To make something public. And noun form, reveal is a verb. All these are verbs. This is a noun. More revelations, a surprising and previously unknown fact that has been disclosed to others. More revelations from the electoral bonds necessitate. We come to know more about the electoral bonds, then something becomes essential or a must. Necessitate, I'm sorry, necessitates something. What is that? A thorough investigation. Necessitates a thorough investigation based on whatever being exposed. How does it start? In the last month or so, I have already done two editorials, if you remember, two or three, based on electoral bonds, more than two, I suppose. In the last month or so, ever since the State Bank of India was compelled by the Supreme Court of India to release information on donations via electoral bonds to political parties, emerging details have only confirmed. I've told you guys many a time, whenever you come across the two prepositions, what are those two? One is since, the other one is for. These are prepositions, then you have to think of present perfect and present perfect continuous. And one more important expression, ever since. This also goes with those two tenses. Here, ever since, but the clause that goes with ever since should be in past. Ever since the Bank of India, State Bank of India was compelled. Here it is in past tense, but passive voice. Ever since the Supreme Court compelled the SBI, active voice. Ever since the SBI was compelled by the Supreme Court, past tense, passive voice. And compelled to do what? To release information on donations via electoral bonds to political parties. Emerging details have confirmed, present perfect tense. The worst fears of naysayers in regulatory and policy-making institutions about the scheme before it was introduced by the BJP-led government in 2018. The sentence is from here to here, but what does it say? Ever since the Supreme Court compelled the SBI to reveal the information related to electoral bonds, funds donated via or through electoral bonds to different political parties, the fears of naysayers, an important word we have got for the first time. Naysayers means a person who criticizes, objects to, or opposes something. All these people opposed electoral bond scheme, and the worst fears of those people, the worst fears of naysayers in regulatory, where are these people? Regulatory and policy making institutions. And these people objected. The worst fears of naysayers in regulatory and policy making institutions about the scheme before it was introduced by the BJP led government in 2018. All these have confirmed, the worst fears have been confirmed. Emerging details have confirmed the worst fears of naysayers. A joint investigation that included the Hindu found that at least 33 companies that had aggregate losses. Here it is in past tense, not in past perfect, past tense. A joint investigation was included the Hindu also. A joint investigation that included the Hindu found that at least 33 companies that had aggregate losses of over 1 lakh crore from 2016-17 to 2022-23 had donated close to 582 crore, of which 75% went to the ruling BJP. Loss-making some companies had aggregate losses of over 1 lakh crore, and these loss-making companies had donated. Here we have past perfect, first action, close to 582 crore, of which 70 to 75%, the lion's share, went to the ruling BJP. Loss making companies were donating substantial sums. I use this word quite often, substantial. Substantial means of considerable importance, size, or worth. If you read the newspaper every day, there will be substantial improvement and you can raise your standards. Loss making companies were donating substantial sums. Profit making firms were making donations exceeding their aggregate profits. This is a paradoxical situation. A loss making company cannot donate, but loss making companies were donating substantial sums, were donating, past continuous tense. On the other hand, profit making firms were making donations, again past continuous tense, exceeding the aggregate profits. Imagine your profits 1 lakh, you donate 2 lakhs. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Some donor firms were not reporting data on net profits or direct taxes. And some donor companies are holding information. Some donor firms, means companies, were not reporting, again past continuous tense, were not reporting data. You have to be alert. Datum singular and data plural. But data is also used as a collective noun. When we use data as a plural of datum, we have to use a plural verb. When we use data as a collective noun, we have to use a singular verb. Some donor firms were not reporting data on net profits or direct taxes. Some newly incorporated firms were making, again, so many times past continuous, were making donations before the stipulated 3-year period. Stipulated, an important word. Demand or specified typically as part of an agreement. Generally, this goes with tomorrow when you take the exam, you have to answer 30 questions in the stipulated time period of 20 minutes. Stipulated time period, an important expression, means regulated. There is a regulation. What is it? Before 3-year period, they should not donate. But some firms were making donations before the stipulated 3-year period after being formed. From the date of forming, 3 years, they're not supposed to donate. But some firms were donating. The list of the rule breaking, all these show that companies are breaking the rules, violation of rules. The list of the rule breaking and suspect sources of funding. Here, what is the subject? The list of the rule breaking and suspect sources of funding. put in brackets the phrase is. The list is significantly large. That means many companies are there. The nature of these donations raises several questions. Again, you have to become alert. I've told many a time, arise, 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 rose, risen, intransitive verb and irregular verb. Raise, raised, raised, transitive verb and a regular verb. It can take an object. Raises what? When you get an answer with two question words, what or whom, the answer is the object. Raises what? Several questions because it takes an object, a regular verb, a transitive verb. Were these loss making firms the fronts to launder money? The editorial poses a question. All these firms, not at all convincing. Looking at the profiles of the companies and the amounts they were donating, they don't match. Not at all convincing. Based on that, the editorial poses a question. Were these loss making firms the fronts to launder money? Are they using these firms to launder money? Money laundering. Launder means to wash. Laundry, the noun form. But here, launder conceal the origins of money obtained illegally, typically by transfers involving foreign banks or legitimate businesses. You get money illegally, but you try to pass it on through a legal channel. That is known as money laundering. Were the firms, not one question, two, three questions. First question, are they being used to launder money? Second question, were the firms that did not report profit losses shell companies? Some companies did not report profit loss. Are these companies or were these companies shell companies? Means only on paper. One more question. Were donor firms or donor companies that made significant profits but did not pay net direct taxes in aggregate for a significantly long period engaged in tax evasion? We have, on the other hand, some companies have made a lot of profits and they did not pay net direct taxes in aggregate for a long period. And does it mean they are engaged in tax evasion? Evasion means what? The act of avoiding something or someone. In this context, tax evasion, not paying the tax. All these are pertinent questions, means relevant questions posed by the editorial. These supplement other questions raised earlier. Supplement, add to. Other questions raised earlier was the fact that a number of firms under investigation by agencies such as Enforcement Directorate and the Income Tax Department were significant donors for the ruling party, an indication that these agencies were being used as a means to ensure quid pro quo. Quid pro quo means what? Something given or received for something else. Earlier, one question was raised. What was it? Enforcement Directorate and Income Tax Department agencies, they were being used because the companies which were targeted by these agencies, they donated a lot. That means what? It is the idea of the editorial. Do remember, it means editorial opines. It means the government is using these agencies to get the donations. It is like quid pro quo. Means what? You give something and in return we give something. You donate, then we don't investigate the cases against you. The second part of the editorial, Reserve Bank of India and Election Commission of India officials were emphatic in their apprehensions that the bond scheme could be utilized in money laundering and tax evasion. From day one, this scheme was controversial. And what were the apprehensions? Apprehensions are used regularly. Apprehension means fear, anxiety or fear that something bad or unpleasant will happen in future. Reserve Bank of India and Election Commission of India officials were emphatic, means very strong in expressing in their apprehensions, fears that the bonds scheme could be utilized in money laundering, one thing, and tax evasion, another thing. And the data shows the same thing. Yet, contrasting word. The Union Finance Ministry went ahead with the scheme. Though they expressed emphatically the apprehensions, the Union Government, Union Finance Ministry went ahead with the scheme. In the 5.5 years 5.5 years of its operation, thousands of crores were encashed by political parties via electoral bonds, with the BJP receiving the lion's share. 5.5 years, a lot of political parties received funds via electoral bonds. And of these parties, if you take the funds, the major share, the lion's share, went to the BJP. Lion's share means the largest part of something. While the court must be lauded, we must laud the court active voice, the court must be lauded passive voice. Must, personal obligation or obligation imposed by the writer, or to convey the idea something is compulsory. While the court must be lauded, laud means to praise a person highly. While the court must be lauded for ending, stopping an opaque scheme. This electoral bond scheme is not a transparent scheme, opaque scheme with serious issues. The fact that large amounts were donated from dubious sources. Dubious, again, an important word. Doubtful sources before every election is an indictment. Already, indictment we have got a few times. What is the typical meaning I give usually? Serious allegation made officially against someone or something. But here we have a different meaning altogether. Here, indictment means a thing that serves to illustrate, that a system or situation is bad and deserves to be condemned. Here, the fact that large amounts were donated from dubious sources before every election is an indictment of the nature of campaign financing in place during this period. Based on that dubious sources, those dubious sources, here it serves that some thorough investigation has to be done and it has to be condemned. With the polity in India busy campaigning for the general election, it is up to the electorate, the public, to assess the effects of the electoral bond scheme. Effects, again, you have to recollect, we have got so many times. Effect, effect. Affect is a regular verb. Effect can be a noun, can be a verb. Generally, we use as a noun. It can be used as a verb. The effects of electoral bond scheme. It is up to the electorate to assess the effects. But more importantly, once the election is over and governance takes over, Parliament and the regulatory institutions must conduct a thorough investigation. Because the sources are dubious, thorough investigation is a must. Must conduct thorough investigation into the nature of donations and whether the donors and recipients broke laws. They have to investigate nature of donations, one thing, and also those who donated and those who received, whether they violated the laws or not. The judiciary, before government bodies like judiciary, executive, legislature, we have to use a definite article there. The judiciary must prod these institutions. Prod has two different meanings. One is to poke with a sharp thing, but here prod means to encourage someone to take action, especially when they are being slow or unwilling. Here, the court, the judiciary must prod, must push these enforcement agencies, and that's what it means. A cleanup of campaign and electoral financing is a must for a healthy democracy. For a healthy democracy, what is a must? Cleanup of campaign and electoral financing. The money they receive towards campaigning should be clean, should not depend on dubious sources. That's all about the editorial. An easy one because I've done 3 or 4 times, a familiar one. And I request you guys to join at 7:30 bilingual session. There today I have brought many questions, challenging questions, will be useful. I will use both English and Telugu. You don't have to worry. Have a nice day. And those who don't join, and do remember to subscribe and share. Thank you very much.